Welcome to the School of Advanced and Innovative Leadership Solutions. My name is Dr. Anthony Adams. I'm glad you're here because we're talking about culture today and really culture creation. And if I could be even more specific, we're going to be talking about how to create a high performing organizational culture. But let's start with something a little bit funny anyway. You can see on your screen we've got a couple of gentlemen, and they are in some pretty funny, maybe golf hats or whatever they happen to be. And it says, I don't know how it started either. All I know is it's part of our corporate culture. And I really put that on there because first of all, I just wanted something funny. But the second thing is because sometimes there are cultures that take place. There are things that we do, and we've forgotten why those started and why we do those things in the first place. Also, I wanted to give you a this little saying here that I thought was pretty important because it's real. It says if you do not develop your corporate culture, it will develop itself. Corporate culture doesn't happen by accident. And if it does, you're taking a risk. You're going to end up with a corporate culture one way or the other. And maybe it's the idea that you're just going to allow it to develop. But the problem is that you're taking a big risk because with what develops, will that be something that is conducive to success and optimal performance of your particular organization, whether that be a church or whether that's a nonprofit or a for-profit, manufacturing, off, whatever the case is. The question is will this the the culture that's created, will it be conducive to success? Now, there is a question that seems to, when you're studying uh, organizational cultures, uh, that is asked and is debated, and that is, do leaders shape the culture or are they shaped by it? Now, there's a couple of aspects to that, and I don't want to belabor this or spend a lot of time on it because, especially with what we do, we want to be very practical about getting you the tools that you need to be successful. That's the whole point of this certification. But I think it does, behoove us to think about this. Is it that we are intentional as leaders and we purposefully develop the culture that we need to be there, or do we come into a particular organization and do we see what the culture is there or what it seems to be happening, and then from that standpoint we go ahead and we adjust our leadership and who we are to that particular culture? Well, personally, I believe that corporate culture or organizational culture stems from core values. And I believe that the core values that we're talking about, that it stems from, are those from the founders or the leaders of that particular organization. So I personally fall into the camp that even though I believe both of these are correct, I believe that it behooves leaders to shape their organizational culture. And so that's what we're talking about today. How can you actually shape your organizational culture? So let's talk about some ways to create a successful organizational culture or corporate culture, and these go across the line. So regardless of the type of organization or corporation that you happen to be in, whether it be for profit, nonprofit, whether it be religious or not, whatever the case is, it will this is all germane to this. So here are some ways to create a successful corporate culture. The first thing is you need to define your culture. And this means that you need to really take some time to think about this. What is it exactly that you feel like would be conducive to success in your particular industry or in your particular area that you're dealing in, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, religious, whatever the case is? What is the type of culture that you're looking for? But more than that, and this is where it really gets to it, what is your culture right now? And I think that's important. What is the culture that you have? And how do you figure that out? Well, the first thing you have to ask is, what do you value? And I'm talking about two areas here. What do you value as a leader? And what do you value as an organization? What do you really, and now I want you to notice this. Number one on the little list here that's in black, values are actual, not aspirational. It's not a matter of, boy, this is what we should value. This is what we want to value. This is what should be important to us. What is important to you? And what is important in your organization? And you really need to take some time to figure this out. How do you do that? Well, one thing I would suggest is to get a team together of stakeholders, of significant stakeholders, or a team of significant players, and there begin to have a conversation about what are our values. And then I want you to notice number two, single versus multiple values. Most organizations have multiple values. For instance, if you happen to be a church, well, you have multiple values. You want to win people to Christ. That's a multiple value. One of the values that you have, I should say. You want to disciple people. You want to help people to become more mature in Christ. You want people to become you want to make sure that they're involved in shaping their world and improving their world, making a difference or an impact in their world. I mean, these are multiple things, and there's probably many more that you might have. But normally, most organizations have one overriding value that seems to drive everything else, that pulls along all the other values that are there. And that's the thing you've got to narrow this thing down to. What is the single value that seems to move your organization, that moves you? And then congruent versus incongruent values. Now, what I'm talking about with this is where that you may have values, but they conflict with one another. Let me go back to the church realm again. So let's say, for instance, that one of your values is that you want to reach new people and the lost, and you're very interested in that. And yet, you don't really have a program that is conducive to reaching out. Maybe you don't have an evangelistic program, and you just expect people to come to you. In other words, what are you really valuing? Are these things, do they go together, or are they in conflict with one another? So these are some of the things that you should discuss with your group. Well, how do we discover them, what our values are? Well, again, number one, discuss with your team what your organization truly values. That's the first place I would develop a team and talk about it. You as a leader might have one perspective as to what you believe it is, but when you start talking about your team, there's a synergy that can take place. And like we talked about with vision, suddenly they have ownership in this thing. And so I think it's important to bring the team in. Number two, it doesn't hurt anything to study other value statements from other organizations. I'm not saying you're going to copy those, but it might help you to kind of get a handle on, yeah, you know what, we value that too, or boy, you know what, that is not us. And it gives you an idea, some perspectives about, the different values that are there. You might do a core values audit. Now, a core values audit, and you can find these. Malfers, I think, has one of these, and there's some others that have these as well. It basically it uses a Likert type scale. A Likert type scale is a scale that's like 1 to 5, 1 being the least, and 5 being yes, I really love this. And normally then what you do is you put, and some of them go 1 to 10, but whatever the case is, with that scale, and then it asks you different questions about different things, and then you rate that, and at the end you figure out which ones are the top ones, and there's usually a way to do that so that you can't game the system, and they're pretty good. So doing a core values audit might be a good idea. As a group, describe the perfect organization. When you start describing this in your mind, what is the perfect organization? What is it exactly that would be great to have? When you start doing that, the interesting thing that happens is you begin to get an idea. Well, they really lean towards this. This seems to be something that we really value now that we're really talking about this. And finally, review your organization's budget. And you say, well, why is that? Because the Bible says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And where you are investing your money, that is where your values lie. So that'll be important to you, is to review your organization's budget. And this will help you to discover some of your values. So the first thing that we're talking about then is define your culture. The second thing is to reward and recognize. Now we're talking about developing a successful organizational culture. Listen to me. When we develop an organizational culture, one of the things that happens is that when you start rewarding others for their work and you start recognizing others for what they're doing and not taking credit for all of the things that are happening yourself, but boy, this person did this and this person did this, and you're so proud of this person, all the things that you're doing, where you're not so self-promoting, but now you're others promoting. You are creating a culture where people want to do well. They want to accomplish things. They want to be successful in their endeavors, because they know that they'll be rewarded for that they'll be recognized for their labor. So this will also create a good corporate culture. Another thing is to get social with your people. This is important. There are some leaders and administrators, pastors even, that have a tendency to be, they have a tendency to be hands off. They find themselves where that they're standoffish, they're very professional, they want to keep everything on a professional level. And to really develop a great corporate culture or organizational culture, you need to get social. Well, here's some ideas for that. Holiday parties. Boy, those are great. I mean, first of all, you'd like to celebrate anyway, and you're mixing with the group that you have. You don't even have to spend a lot of money on it, but you're doing things. This is good. Golf leagues. Now, not everybody plays golf. I get that. There's also bowling leagues, and there's different things such as that where you'll get some people there, but participate in those. Get social. Be a part of those. Doesn't matter if you win it, and if you now are like me, and I happen to be pretty competitive, you want to win. But make sure that your competitiveness is on a friendly basis, and realize what your main objective is. It is not to win some cheap trophy. It is really, your main objective is to create a social bond, to bring people together in a cohesive manner. Retreats are another thing that's wonderful. It gives you a chance to not only bond as a team, it helps you to work out some difficulties that you might be having as a team. It also can help you in terms of developing strategies and developing a vision, developing, some game plans and that kind of things. So retreats are great. Game nights, hey, you would be surprised. Game nights are fun. And, it's not one of those things that you can do all the time. I realize that you're there to make money. But listen, a happy team, the right culture can increase the financial bottom line of your organization, on the effectiveness of your organization, uh, exponentially. So game nights are one, but it's really about social interaction. Find ways to be social. I I, I remember I had a particular supervisor, and she would do, and you've heard of this, walk around leadership. The problem was is that she was so obvious about it. She would even tell you that's what she was doing. And not only that, but she wasn't good at it, and it was awkward. Socialization is really just a matter of, hey, get to know somebody and befriend them and see what they're doing. I guarantee you that it will help you. So get social is the third thing. Number four, promote self-care. And I say this because, when people realize that, hey, you care about them, you care about their health, you care about their well-being, you care about their home life as well as their work life. There's more, it creates more of a bond that they have with the organization. So a good example of this, gym memberships, flexible work schedules, options to work remotely, where, hey, my wife is pregnant, or we've just had a baby, and it would be so helpful if I could just work from home for a little while. Or maybe, listen, maybe it just works where that, hey, they can work from home and you can just have, meetings where that they come together and that sort of thing. And there's conference calls, different things that you can do. So, but that promotes self-care. Another thing is to emphasize purpose. And I am a big one on setting goals. I really want to encourage you to set goals, um, because most people, especially if they are driven, if they are the kind of people that want to succeed, they need the feedback of a goal. Well, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. I got it done in this amount of time. I got it done at this level of efficiency or expertise. Uh, this is something that I've done. People need goals. And so I would say that. And the second thing is that when you emphasize the purpose, this is what you're doing. It's so valuable what you're doing. This is the reason why this needs to be done. We're depending on you. You are helping people to take ownership. When they take ownership of what they're doing, when they take ownership of, this is the final product, and I was a part of this. This is what we do. This is what I do. You are creating, again, a very successful corporate or organizational structure. So emphasize purpose. That's a biggie. Another thing is, and there's if you remember Sesame Street, who are the people in your neighborhood? And in the same sense, who are the people in your organization? One of the things that I would not do is I would not refer to them as employees. I wouldn't refer to them as, well, there are workers. Um, I wouldn't, if you're in a church situation, I wouldn't refer to them as, well, they're the laity. Um, in for-profit situations, even nonprofit situations, you might want to refer to them as, these are our associates. Um, in a church setting, you might want to just keep it very personal. And this is Jill, or this is Tim, or this is Jack, or whatever it happens to be. This is our director of communications. This is our pastor of creativity, or whatever the case is. What you're doing there is you're treating everyone with respect. And you're also dealing with these people and talking with the people, dealing with these people as someone who is a potential source of insight, and they are. You would be shocked at the insight that the people that are on the ground floor, the people that are there, the insight that they have. So if you treat them with respect and treat them in that manner, you are creating, again, this corporate culture where everyone is working together. And then you want to encourage innovativeness. And what I'm talking about here is encourage people to suggest new ways of doing things. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. And so I want you to be prepared for this. And that is when you encourage people to do something new, when you encourage people to suggest new ways of doing things, first of all, there is a natural tendency to want to resist. And that's important to realize because people like the status quo. A lot of people do. It's comfortable, it's easy. And then sometimes, pastor, CEO, president, whoever you happen to be, sometimes when somebody suggests, well, maybe you ought to think about doing this or trying it this way, and you've worked so hard with what you've been doing that it becomes offensive to you. And you have to make sure that you lower that and you say, no, you know what? I need innovative ideas. Not every idea that comes to me I'm going to accept, but I am going to listen. You got to be intentional about this. I am going to listen to every idea that comes because you never know which one might be the winner. And the final thing that I wanted to say is speak with pride about your organization. You know, it's a terrible thing, but I've seen it where pastors run their church down and talk about how bad it is and how terrible it is. Uh, and they don't normally do that uh, directly to their parishioners, but it gets back to them. I can just tell you that it gets back to them. Sometimes people do that with their organizations. Sometimes they do that, depending on whatever it is. Speak with pride about your organization. Talk about how awesome your team is. Look for things that are great about your organization. I'm going to tell you something. When you do that and you talk it up and talk about it and that sort of thing, you'll be surprised how much your team will then respond to that type of positive reinforcement. And you're creating an environment where people want to live up to those expectations. So that's another way to create um, a great and successful organization. Well, we've talked a little bit about developing your corporate culture. We've also written about it in your manual, and I want you to look at that as well. And you're going to be talking about it, and I think it'll be a tremendous benefit to you.